Welcome back to another episode. Today we're going to be putting all of this into the new rig, making it all fresh again, giving it an absolute birthday. So run you through how we're going to do that. Now, because this car has literally zero service history, I only really know what's been done by what I've been told and what I can see, which isn't much. I've gone and got pretty much everything that this car needs, apart from transmission fluid, which I'll probably do later on. New diff oil, front and rear is the exact same. New engine oil plus filters. I'm going to do a full flush on the system. Power steering fluid. Coolant, I've already done the coolant, but I'll show you how we did that anyway. Brake fluid, I'll look at the brakes as well and just see whether they need replacing. They do feel pretty good though. And once that's all done, I'll go for a drive, fill it up with fuel, and we're going to put some of this stuff in. I haven't actually used this stuff before, so we'll see if it actually makes a difference, but it's supposed to basically clean your whole fuel system. And then down the end, we've got a couple goodies here as well. I won't give away what it is just yet, but I mean, that one's pretty obvious. When I get to the inside of the car, I'll show you what we've got. It's gonna look pretty flash by the time we're done. And of course, I've got the other filters to go with this as well. Air filter, fuel filter, and oil filter. Now, there is nothing worse than working on a filthy car, so before getting stuck in, we gave the Moo a much needed clean. The interior was covered in dirt and grime and absolutely stunk, so we gave it a quick detail too.
God damn!
And with all of that sorted, I started on the service. First up, I'm replacing the engine oil and filter. Typically a simple process, but this one had other plans. This happens every time. These gloves are too small. So the sump bolt is a 17 mil. Just put down a bit of a splash sheet. Oh, mum will not be happy. I've gone and warmed up the car, which makes draining the oil a lot easier. Just be careful not to burn yourself when you're working underneath. Just while that drains, I'm just cleaning up the sump plug here. What you want to check is the copper ring on it, because if it's got any marks on it or looks to be wearing, you want to replace that. But this one actually looks alright. Now, I know this stuff is pretty basic, but it's got to be done. I thought I may as well share it with you, and if it helps at least one person, then it was worth it. So I've just found out mid-process that the engine oil filter will not come out of the bottom there unless I undo like the front drive shaft or something. So I'm gonna have to try and pull it out from above because I don't want to do that. What a pain. I think it's just because of the 3-inch exhaust that's on it. Surely this isn't the normal way of doing it. I decided to put the old filter back on and run the oil flush through. Ideally, you do want to replace the filter as well, which I had planned on. I just did not expect to have a problem doing this, and I wasn't sure the best way around it at the time. I'm just going to pour through while I've got the sump plug off. Just a bit more of this older oil that I've got. Well, not old oil, but the flush oil that I was using, just to try and drain out the rest of whatever's in there. And while I wait for that to drain, put a new air filter in. Oh my luck, you're probably going to take all the wheels off to do this or some shit. It's not bad, but it's not great. That's the difference anyway. I mean, one's white, one's red, but is that a fresh one? With the new air filter in, I also topped up the washer fluid and gave the coolant reservoir a good clean, and refilled with some fresh pre-mixed coolant. That is kind of gross in there. Tightened up the sump plug and continued the oil change. So I've tried every way I can think of to get this oil filter out, and it will not come out. It won't go up. It won't come through this gap here, which apparently this is where it's supposed to come. Tried unbolting the exhaust and it still will not fit. There's not enough wiggle room, and I've had a quick search and apparently this is one of the issues that they have. You can get them out by going up between the exhaust and the frame. Otherwise they can get it out here, but in my case. I think with the bigger exhaust, yeah, it will not come. So I'm unbolting the drive shaft now. It's only 4 bolts. It's pretty easy to do just by wedging it, and then I'm able to get it undone with just a 14mm spanner. So yeah, I'll undo that, get it out of the way, do the change and everything, put the new oil in, and then never do it again. Anyway, let's get it done. I haven't taken the drive shaft off before, so I don't know if there's like oil that's gonna come out of the front of the diff, or I'll be prepared anyways. Well, that wasn't as bad as I thought it was gonna be. Thank God that bit's done. Given the high vibration nature of the drive shaft, I'm using some mid-strength Loctite to replace the bolts. This will stop them coming loose, but also means I can still get them off again next service. After topping up the engine oil, I ran the car for a minute, double checked the level, and with all that good, I disposed of the old fluid. With that now complete, I can start the coolant flush. To avoid making a mess and potentially scalding yourself, you're going to want to do this when the engine is cold. Most radiators have a drain plug, but if not, you can remove the bottom hose and drain it that way. It's recommended you use demineralized water for this process, but to do the flush, I'm just using tap water. I ran the car with the flush fluid for 15 minutes with the heater cranked, then drained and replaced the system with some new coolant. And then it was time for the fuel filter. This is where I started to have some serious troubles. Now, if your filter is like mine and it's been absolutely cranked on previously, then what I've done is just how this is bolted, I've just flipped it upside down after draining it. And it means I can have a solid thing to be able to sort of lever off. Managed to get it with these, but yeah, it was on ridiculously tight. And that'll be the rubber seal that we replace. I've changed my fuel filter many times, though this one was slightly different. After doing the swap, it seemed to be drawing air in somehow, and the car was running really rough. So, just changed the filter, put it all back together, and pumped it up with this air valve out, so it could pump the air out. Supposedly that's how it works, but it hasn't. It's still running kind of like it's cutting in and out, like it's not getting enough fuel every now and then. So, process of elimination, I tried a different brand filter, replaced the fuel lines and clamps. I even replaced the vacuum lines because they'd fallen to pieces, and one was coming off the fuel pump. I thought maybe that was causing the issue, and then swapped out the hand primer, but still no good. Now I've swapped all of the components out, and I've since been shown the proper way to prime the filter. Shout out Grace. Basically, you take off the outline, so you leave the one coming from the tank on, and give it a pump, and then when fuel starts to come out of there, it's primed. So you actually don't have to worry about this little valve here, little air valve, so you can leave that one as is. But then to make sure there's no air in the lines, like throughout the whole system, we've been bleeding the injectors as well, which basically involves, I'll show you here, there's sort of 4 lines coming off the top of the motor, and you just use, in this case, a 17mm spanner just to crack the top of it, and then with the motor running, it'll allow the fuel to spit out air to get out. Close it up, and you're basically starting from the front and working your way back. And just make sure the motor doesn't die on you in the process, because otherwise it might let air in and then you'll have to start all over again. But we've basically done this to ensure that if the rough idle does continue, then we know air's coming in and it's not air that's like trapped in the line somewhere. So it kind of just eliminates that. But it's quite an awkward job to do. So I've literally gone, and like, because we've had to do this a few times, I've gone and welded up my 17mm spanner. I added an extra 80mm to it so that I can perfectly reach in here. So the first one you get from there, second one is under that way, and then these last 2 you can get from the top, but it's worked bloody perfect. And after all that, I put my finger over the drain hose and it ran fine, right up until I let go. So it ended up being like a $2 O-ring. So I just replaced the whole water sensor for like $20 or something, and hopefully won't have to worry about the fuel system again for a while. Next were the diff oils. Pretty straightforward. There's a fill plug and a drain plug. Usually quite obvious, but on the front of these, it's only a 12mm bolt on the bottom back of the housing. Make sure you can loosen the fill plug first, so once it's drained, you know you can refill them again. This hadn't been done in a long time. I actually had to use a screwdriver and a bit of wire to clean the shit out of the back of the drain, and holy dooly did it stink. Repeat the same on the rear, then tighten the drain bolts and fill the diff until fluid just starts to dribble out. Now I wasn't sure what torque to tighten these to, but a good tip once it's tight is to paint a line over the bolt and housing, and just check every so often to be sure they don't come loose. While I was under the car, I gave all the drive shaft and suspension components a good grease, then got to bleeding the brakes. We made our own bleeding device, but you can buy these pretty cheap. I squeezed the bottle and used the hose to suck out most of the old fluid in the reservoir, then topped it up with the new fluid, being careful not to spill any, as it is very corrosive. To bleed the fluid, you want to work from the furthest to the closest line from the reservoir. Simply remove the cap on the back of the brake caliper and connect your hose to the nipple. Loosen it off and repeatedly press the brakes until the new fluid comes out. Yeah, that's good. Then tighten and repeat on the other three. Keep an eye on how much fluid is in the reservoir and be sure to top it up as required. Don't let it run empty or you may end up with air in the lines. I then topped up the clutch reservoir and power steering. Alrighty, so now the service is done, I'm going to start cleaning up the interior a little bit. I actually found last night that the rear park lights weren't working, so I sort of started pulling things apart in here already and found that someone had just cut the wire inside the door trim here. So joined that back up and now they work sweet. But today we're just going to be putting in a new steering wheel because this one is pretty warped and worn, and then I've also got some new carpet to go in, so I'll show you what that looks like. I ordered this carpet brand new off eBay, which actually suits a TF Holden Rodeo. This being a wagon though, I have ordered some extra unmolded lengths, which I will cut to suit later on. So to install the new carpet, I have to uninstall everything else in the way. First the seats, plastics and trim, then the old carpet, and finally a good clean. Now I've just gone and picked up a new roll of underlay as well. This is suitable for cars and stuff. So a lot of the old stuff came out when I pulled out the other carpet, it was kind of stuck to it. But I've just gone and cleaned up these wires. And then I'm pretty much just going to cut a section out for each of these little floor pan bits, maybe a bit at the back there. And that should be enough. And then down here, we've got the old carpet. And I actually say that you should put the old one on top of the new one and just mark out where your holes are going to be. Because I'm keeping this, I'm pretty much just going to go chuck this in and see how it fits. I stuck the new underlay down and threw the carpet over the top. A couple of X-cuts around the gear levers and seat belts got it positioned pretty nicely. I reinstalled the interior and then did a final trim around the center console and outer edges. To change the steering wheel, it was a matter of unbolting the old one, disconnecting the horn, then in reverse order putting the new one on. If you are replacing your factory steering wheel for a custom one, you will need an adapter. Thankfully, this one already had the Boss kit fitted. With the new floor mats, air freshener and dash mat fitted, the inside was looking unreal. All that was left was to add the diesel cleaner, fill up the tank and adjust the tyre pressures, and this rig was ready to roll. You know when you've just serviced your car and like the first couple times you drive it just feels so much better? Well, that's how this feels right now, but like times at least 69. I don't know if it's like a mental thing or what, but this is so much nicer to drive. Obviously it's cleaner and it doesn't smell like the backseat of a school bus anymore, but mechanically, I mean, it starts straight up, it doesn't blow heaps of smoke, and it's just a lot more comfortable to be in. And I can tell you, next episode is when the fun starts, because we're going to be taking this thing off-road, sending it up some hills and stuff. I did go for a little test the other day just to make sure that the four-wheel drive system works and there wasn't going to be any issues. lower wheelbase, obviously. It's manual, which I've only ever driven automatics off-road, so that's going to be a little bit of a learning curve. But I'm so keen. So I hope you're keen as well. And of course, thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Let's go.